In a fit of rage, Nnenna forced Ada to scrub the floors with a toothbrush, an excruciating task that left Ada's hands sore and raw. As she knelt there, scrubbing the tiles, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision, but she knew she had to keep walking or face Nnenna's wrath. In the heart of Lagos, there lived a couple, Nnenna and Chidi, who had been married for 4 years but were still waiting for the blessing of a child. They were both medically healthy, yet no child had come. They were still hoping for the blessing of God for a child. For the meantime, Nnenna suggested they should adopt a child from an orphanage home to call their own. Initially, Chidi was against the idea, but after some thought, he eventually agreed. They adopted a beautiful young girl and named her Ada. From that moment on, they treated her as their own daughter, pouring their love into her as if she were their flesh and blood. As time passed, Chidi grew especially fond of Ada. He would play with her around the house whenever he wasn't at work, their laughter filling every room. However, as years passed, Nnenna was not really close to Ada. Despite having brought her into their lives, she began to feel a growing resentment toward the girl, a feeling that deepened after she discovered she was pregnant. The news brought great joy to the household, but for Ada, everything changed. Nnenna's heart turned cold toward her adopted daughter. She started to see Ada as an outsider, someone who didn't truly belong to their family. As her belly grew, so did her hostility. When Chidi wasn't around, she treated Ada harshly. Nnenna would keep Ada from going to school, assigning her numerous chores and forcing her to spend her days cleaning and cooking instead of going to school. She even forbade Ada from going near Chidi, her husband, constantly reminding the girl that she was adopted and not truly part of the family. Ada would cry in silence, her young heart broken and confused. She feared saying anything to her father, worried that her mother might send her back to the orphanage home if she complained. One evening, Chidi suggested they all go out for dinner to eat. He went upstairs to get Ada, helping her pick out a nice dress and brushing her hair. Ada was overjoyed, thrilled to spend time with her parents outside of the house. As they came down the stairs together, Ada holding Chidi's hand, Nnenna's face darkened. "What's this?" she asked sharply, her eyes narrowing at Ada. "You can't expect me to go out with her around." Chidi looked at her, surprised. "What are you talking about?" "Ada is our daughter, Nnenna." Nnenna crossed her arms. "No, she isn't. I don't want her near me or my unborn child." Ada's face fell, as she looked down at her shoes, trying to fight back the tears. Chidi gently released her hand and turned to his wife, his voice firm. "Nnenna, Ada is part of this family, and you need to accept that. She has done nothing wrong." With a huff, Nnenna stormed off to her room, leaving Chidi and Ada standing there in silence. Chidi knelt down and gave Ada a comforting hug. "I'm sorry, Ada. Don't listen to her. You are loved, and you will always be my daughter." Ada nodded, but her heart ached. She wanted her mother's love as much as her father's, yet it felt further away with each passing day. As Nnenna's pregnancy progressed, her treatment to Ada became increasingly harsh. She limited Ada's meals, often giving her the smallest portions and leaving her with little energy for the day. Ada would go to bed hungry, listening to her stomach grumble, while her mother made excuses about not wasting food on someone who doesn't belong. Chidi noticed Ada's shrinking frame and tired eyes, and he started to confront Nnenna more frequently. "Why are you treating her like this, Nnenna? This isn't the woman I married." Nnenna's eyes filled with resentment. "She's not our child, Chidi. Why can't you understand that? I want our home to be for our real family, our own blood." Chidi was deeply hurt by her words, but he refused to back down. Ada is innocent in all of this. She deserves to be treated with love and kindness. Yet, as much as he tried to protect Ada, he couldn't always be there. When he was at work, Nnenna took every opportunity to keep Ada occupied with chores, barely giving her time for schoolwork or rest. Ada's nights became filled with tears as she cried herself to sleep, wondering why her mother no longer cared for her. She missed the days when they would all laugh together as a family, and when her mother's embrace felt warm and safe. Despite the negativity at home, Ada worked hard in school. She loved learning and dreamed of one day becoming a teacher. But when she came home with a glowing report card, she hoped to share her success with her parents, especially with Nnenna, her mother. "Mom, look!" Ada exclaimed, holding up the report card filled with excellent grades. "I did really well in school." Nnenna glanced at the paper and scoffed. "And so, should I clap for you? You think good grades mean anything when you're just an adopted child? Get out of my sight immediately. You better save your energy for chores instead of wasting it on studying." Feeling crushed, Ada's excitement faded. She ran back to her room with tears rolling down from her eyes. That night, as Ada cooked, she couldn't help but feel the weight of her mother's words. She chopped vegetables with tears streaming down her face, wondering if she would ever earn Nnenna's love and approval. One fateful day, Nnenna returned home in a particularly foul mood. When she entered the house, she found Ada reading a book she had borrowed from a friend. Nnenna's face twisted in anger. "What are you doing wasting time with that book? You should be cleaning," she snapped, snatching the book from Ada's hands and tossing it across the room. "Mom, I was just," Ada started to explain, but Nnenna cut her off. "Don't you dare talk back to me. Who is your mother? Do I look like her?" Nnenna shouted, her voice echoing through the house. In a fit of rage, Nnenna forced Ada to scrub the floors with a toothbrush, an excruciating task that left Ada's hands sore and raw. As she knelt there, scrubbing the tiles, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision, but she knew she had to keep walking or face Nnenna's wrath. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard Chidi and Nnenna arguing again downstairs. She closed her eyes, wishing that the arguing would stop, and that everything could return to the way it was. But deep down, Ada knew that things would never be the same. Chidi often asked her if everything was okay, and Ada would nod, too afraid to tell him the truth. She feared that if she spoke up, her mother would find a way to send her back to the orphanage home, and that thought terrified her. One day, while Ada was washing the dishes, she accidentally dropped a plate. It shattered into pieces, and before she could react, Nnenna stormed into the kitchen, her face twisted with rage. "Look at what you've done. You can't do anything right, can you?" Nnenna screamed, pointing at the shards of glass scattered on the floor. "Now you pay for that. Clean it up. And while you're at it, get me a new plate." Ada's heart raced as she knelt to gather the broken pieces, her hands shaking. She could feel Nnenna's glare burning into her back, a constant reminder of her failure. "I'm sorry, Mom," Ada said softly, hoping her words might soften her mother's anger. But Nnenna was relentless. "Sorry isn't enough. Maybe I should send you out of the house instead," she snapped, her words echoing through the kitchen like a dark cloud. Ada fought back tears as she cleaned, wishing she could disappear. One fateful day, Nnenna had Ada scrubbing the floors, even though the girl was visibly exhausted. As Ada worked, Nnenna stood by, arms crossed, watching her every move. Suddenly, Ada's foot slipped on a wet patch, and she tumbled down the stairs, landing at the bottom with a sickening thud. Her body lay still, her small frame sprawled across the cold floor. Hearing the noise, Nnenna rushed to the scene, her heart pounding. But when she saw Ada lying motionless, fear gripped her, and she quickly called Chidi, who was on his way home. When he arrived and saw Ada unconscious, his heart shattered. He scooped her up and rushed to the hospital, praying that she would survive. Hours later, the doctor approached Chidi with a somber expression. "I'm sorry, sir. We did everything we could, but, he paused, his eyes filled with sympathy. Your daughter didn't make it. Chidi's world crumbled. The weight of the loss was unbearable, and his heart filled with grief and anger. He returned home, consumed by sorrow, and confronted Nnenna, whose guilt was written all over her face. How could you, he shouted, tears streaming down his face. How could you treat Ada like this? She was a part of our family, our daughter. Nnenna trembled, trying to find the words. I didn't mean for this to happen. I wanted you to love our child more, Chidi. I wanted us to have a real family. Chidi's eyes flashed with fury. A real family. Ada was as real a daughter as we could ever hope for. And because of you, she's gone. A few days after Ada's death, Nnenna suffered a miscarriage. The tragedy of losing both Ada and her unborn child broke Chidi's heart completely. He barely spoke to Nnenna, keeping his distance and spending most of his days in silence. Nnenna, filled with regret, tried to reach out to him, pleading for forgiveness. But Chidi's heart had grown cold toward her. In his mind, her actions had destroyed the family they had built. Eventually, Chidi made a decision. He could no longer stay in a marriage that had been tainted by cruelty and betrayal. He filed for divorce, leaving Nnenna to face the consequences of her actions. Left alone in the empty house, Nnenna felt the full weight of her actions. She realized too late that love wasn't just about blood, it was about kindness, acceptance, and seeing beyond one's own desires. Though she pleaded with Chidi for forgiveness, his decision was final. The family she had once longed for was now gone, leaving her with nothing but regret. And so, Nnenna's story became a somber reminder of the consequences of envy and selfishness. She lost both her husband and the love of an innocent child she had once called her own, forever haunted by the memory of Ada.